Trent Williams has ended his holdout. Brandon Aiyuk is back in the building. The San Francisco 49ers have a game on Monday. We have an important Ricky Pearsall update. And as usual, Mike Florio just pissing off 49ers fans. Stick around. We'll talk about it all here. Welcome into the Bully Ball Podcast. I'm Jason Aponte. That's Steph Sanchez. Make sure you guys are liked and subscribed to the Gold Standard Podcast Network, wherever you get your audio podcasts, and on YouTube. Steph, vibes. What are they like?
Vibes, I think, are good. They're back. I mean, you mentioned it. You kind of teased it. We'll talk about all that stuff. I mean, there's a lot. It's like we're coming back to life right now.
100%. Before we get into anything, obviously, I think it's important to talk about the scary situation surrounding Ricky Pearsall and the attempted robbery. Just want to extend well wishes and hope that his recovery is on track for however long it takes. Take your time, buddy. Very scary and unfortunate situation. But shout out to Ricky Pearsall. Tim Ryan said it sounds like he was in the weight room. He seems to be doing very well. Just take your time, Ricky, man. Get better, man. And, you know, just an unfortunate situation all the way around. So I'm just glad he's good.
Yeah, it's just a reminder of, I think, how fragile life can be. It just feels really miraculous to talk about him already being back in the building, him getting released from the hospital just a day after it happened. Really incredible. I do also, want to thank the San Francisco PD sergeant who helped. I believe her name was Joelle Harrell, if I'm not mistaken. And I just truly feel like her quick action, really made it possible, I think, for the positive outcome that we know about Ricky Pearsall now. I think she's a hero. But yeah, I just hope Ricky could just now focus on healing physically and mentally, because, we know how tough it is going through something that scary, that serious. So yeah, hopefully he has a speedy recovery.
Yeah, and that's all we really can do at this point is just, wish, give him well wishes and everything and hope that everything goes well. But, him being in the weight room is obviously a good sign. But football's on the back burner when something like that happens. That's probably the least of our worries at this point with Ricky. So it's good to hear that he's good as well, too. The good news continues today. We wake up and social media has been used as a tool in these contract negotiations for gaining leverage, however, gaining attention to a situation. But Trent Williams' brother says on to year 13, and we're back. We're on our way back to the Bay. And then Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport all confirmed that, the deal, while it's not done, is pretty much in place. Trent Williams is back for week 1. Steph, the odds shifted from 3.5 to 4.5. And there he is practicing. The odds shifted from 3.5 to 4.5 just based on this news. Let's go. Trent, you're in the building. What are you thinking, Steph? I'm feeling really, really good about this.
Man, I was literally on a Jets podcast yesterday. Shout out Talking Jets.
All right.
And I probably sounded so depressed and just so not optimistic talking about the offensive line. And this was last night, right? I didn't know Trent was going to be back. But boy, do I feel incredible and completely like a 180 difference now in my mood and just my feeling towards week 1 now, because I think we know how big Trent Williams being back is. And I love the fact that even though the deal's not completely done yet, there's that like good faith, knowing that they're so close and they have faith that they're going to get this done, that he feels comfortable, flying in today to join practice with the team. And yeah, we already seen some video of him out there. So I think that's incredible. You really couldn't have asked for a better outcome at this point. Well, okay, maybe you could have. A better outcome would have been this getting done like some months ago, I would say. But hey, I think, Jay, we need to have a serious conversation about this 49ers front office being grade A procrastinators, grade A crammers. Is it a problem?
I don't know, Steph. Look, I'll be honest. I'm not trying to dodge.
Just happy it's done.
I'm not trying to dodge the topic, but there's been so much negativity, like in this entire offseason. And now it just feels like the urge to scream, we're so fucking back. And never a doubt, baby. I think we are so back. Again, team is largely healthy for what it's worth. Trent's on his way back. We'll see what he looks like, starting at left tackle. Look, he's dapping everybody up. He looks good. Everybody's happy.
Yeah.
Look, the vibes are great.
Dude.
That's great.
Let's cue up the John Lynch, pano.
The pad over gif. Yeah. I mean, look, you get the Aiyuk deal done. We'll talk about that right after this, and now Trent's back. It's just, he didn't have to do anything in training camp, so he's relatively fresh. We get another report. CMC's reporting today. Is practicing? It's just, I am happy. Obviously, anything and everything can happen during the season, but right now there's just no room for negativity right now, man. There's just no room for it, or in any sort of serious discussion. It's time to just look in the mirror, wear your 49ers stuff, and say we're so fucking back, and never a doubt. That's how I feel about this.
Yeah, you mentioned Christian McCaffrey back as well. Aaron Banks is back. Jawan Jennings back from his oblique injury. So, man, things are trending in the right direction. I guess, man, I mean, we haven't even talked about Brandon Aiyuk yet because it feels like so much has happened since that deal. But I see you rocking the jersey, Jay.
Oh no, it's Alex Smith.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's not.
We'll go with that. I know those drop shadows. Alex Smith didn't wear that, but we'll just say that.
I mean, the thing is this. Look, with everything that's been going on right now, it's Tuesday, and now we can focus on football. There's a game Monday. It's a game Monday. We can talk about whether the procrastination is something that we'll talk about that later. We will talk about that another day. We will kick that can down the road. We are going to procrastinate on talking about the procrastination discussion. That is how I'm choosing to deal with this. Now, what everybody wants to know is, what are the cap ramifications? We don't have any numbers because the contract isn't done. But essentially, any deal with Trent Williams would open up more cap, and the 49ers have done some restructuring on their own. Malik Collins also got restructured, which puts the 49ers at $50 million, the highest in the league right now for cap space. That number figures to go up once the Trent Williams deal is negotiated. More good news, because all that stuff is going to have to be taken into next season, and then you'll figure out what you do with Lenore and who's going to be on the roster. Will Hargrave be here? Will Juszczyk be here? How do you do the Purdy deal? But everything is kind of lining up right now. It just, they still have to do some work, because even with all the cap savings that they're doing right now, they're still going to be in the red next season, as well too. So yeah, I think right now, that's another good sign. So I believe if Rob doesn't have the tweet, I think it was Spotrac that sent it out. Malik Collins restructuring makes it $50 million, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So that's substantial. So there's a lot of ramifications to all of this, and they did that by adding void years to Collins' contract, and there's still some other things that they can do for some other contracts. So they still have some work to do next season. But again, more good news again. It just feels like a lot of this news, aside from the Ricky Pearsall thing, which we addressed earlier, it's just been good, in the last few days, and the vibes haven't been higher.
It just kind of is a reminder that we're all just a little dramatic before just a little during the off season when things aren't happening in the timeline that we like. But yeah, I mean, freeing up the cap space obviously is great. Just proof the cap gymnastics are a thing, and this team seems to be one of the best at it. So yeah, 50.5 million of cap space going into week 1. And yeah, they opened up some cap space with Brandon Aiyuk's deal too. We could expect the same with Trent. So yeah, I mean, this looks pretty positive, and I think it just highlights the urgency for this 2024 season to be the one that they finally get this done. I think that would be the end of all of the good vibes. Or not the end, but
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I got you. But the thing is this too. It's interesting because I'm sure the 49ers are right now on September 3rd looking to roll over all of that money. But it does put them in an interesting position of mid-season acquisition, 1 year type of, they almost did with Chase Young, where, you can get them off the books type thing. So they're in a position where, if they need help for, whatever reason, whether it's just injuries or just people underperforming, they can also add to this team too, you know. And again, if the goal is all in, if the goal is Super Bowl or bust, which it is for not every team, right? Like, not the worst team in the NFL isn't like we're Super Bowl or bust. Like, no, there's only a few teams that feel like that actually can do it. If that's the goal, then you're still able to do anything that you want at the trade deadline. And if you don't feel anything's there, then you hold on to that money, and then you roll it over and you figure out what happens with the cap increase, whatever that may be. Hopefully this is another great season for the NFL in terms of viewership and sponsorship deals and streaming services that they sign up with. You get more salary cap that way as well too. So the 49ers right now, everything feels good. I really have a hard time right now, like even just being like a little bit down about anything, because the first good news we got was Brandon Aiyuk was there. Now Trent Williams is here, and Christian McCaffrey. It's just all feeling good on top of the cap space. But let's talk about Brandon Aiyuk. It's really good to have Brandon Aiyuk back. Adding an All-Pro wide receiver to an offense that is going up against a very good defense on Monday, and can get himself open and with man coverage and press coverage. 4 years, 120 million, 70 million guaranteed, I believe, 76 million guaranteed. My goodness, man. I am really, really, really excited about this one. And again, just feels good.
I mean, it's a huge relief to get this one done, just based on the marathon of an off season it had been with this one. I mean, yeah, having someone as good as he is, we know how important that was going to be for this offense, for Brock Purdy. And especially when we think about that week 1 game and how good that Jets defense is going to be, I feel like you're going to need all your weapons. And so having Brandon Aiyuk back at practice this week with this deal done, and now behind him, it's like, let's go. We can start off hot. We can start off fresh. And ultimately, Brandon Aiyuk got, I think, what he wanted, right? I think both sides, well, I don't know. I don't think the 49ers really wanted to pay that much, but Brandon Aiyuk gets what he deserved in the first place. So,
well, Steph. Okay. See, I said I didn't want to talk about anything negative, but I found this interesting. I found this very interesting.
Some piqued your interest.
Yeah, a little bit. Might be a little bit of time for the tinfoil hat. So, 4 years, 120, and then a tweet from Adam Schefter in which he says this was the deal that was offered the entire time. Almost like the San Francisco 49ers were just trying to say, look at him, not us.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
And
the finger pointing.
Yeah, it was just like, hey, it wasn't us. We always wanted to give him this. Okay. All right. Well, we totally believe you. But again, this goes back to what we were talking about. Using Adam Schefter as a mouthpiece to let it get out that you won the negotiation right after that, that's nasty, nasty work. That is very nasty work. Because
they couldn't even let this sit for like
right.
for like an hour before
because
that came out.
The reason it's nasty work, Steph, is because who fucking cares? I don't care who won a negotiation. I don't care who won a negotiation. The player that I wanted signed. The player that the 49ers need to win a Super Bowl signed. I don't give a fuck who won this negotiation. And that's nasty ass work. That is nasty ass work, because you want to set the precedent for other players to say, well, not on our watch. You're not going to be able to bully us. Bullshit. You guys cave almost every time because the 49ers are smart. They have this crazy way of thinking that if you want to win Super Bowls, you got to have good players. So what are we worried about who won the negotiation? Yeah. I just think it's the most arbitrary and just the dumbest conversation. I think it's like, what do you gain by putting that out there? Because I certainly don't care.
It's a little worrisome how many people I've seen like actually believe this too. Like I've seen people reacting to this and being like, wow, like he's so dumb. He could have had this deal this whole time. You actually believe that, guys?
Right.
Come on. And right. Adam Schefter said, yeah, since August 12th, same deal. And I've also seen people say, well, it could have just been the same deal with the same, money, 4 years, 120 million, but they just moved some money around, or they moved the guarantees sooner. Then that's not the same deal. That's not the same deal. And because of the front-loaded guarantees, I think we can assume that that's what Brandon Aiyuk wanted, and he got what he wanted, $76 million between now and April. I mean, that's huge. That's a huge payday. Can't imagine that's what the 49ers were offering to begin with. I mean, we had heard 26 million much of the season, but I I don't care who wins. The only reason I'm talking about it, we're talking about it here, is because some team, the 49ers, have made it like a huge deal throughout this offseason. And even after the deal is done, talking about winning and losing the deal, it really does not matter. The only reason people talk about it and are wondering who won this deal is because they have made it a thing.
We won the deal as 49ers fans. We won the deal. We won. We won. That's all that matters. Again, doesn't really matter how it goes down. I don't care. How it goes down is not my money. You guys figure it out. That's for you to do. That's why you get paid so much. I'm good. As long as he's here. But Christian McCaffrey's back as well, too. So Christian McCaffrey hasn't played all training camp. Brandon Aiyuk's been running routes on a baseball field. Trent Williams has been wherever. I think the discussion has to be, what are the realistic expectations for all three All-Pros? And I think to a degree, we're not really worried. Like, they didn't forget how to play football. They're still very good at it. But obviously there may be some rust, or, there may be just some conditioning. Like, do you expect a snap count limitation with either not Trent? If Trent's out there, Trent's going to play every single down.
Yep.
But with Aiyuk and Christian McCaffrey, do you expect any sort of snap count limitation, or maybe just a little bit more of a rotation?
With CMC, I don't. It would not shock me if Kyle Shanahan's going to make it seem like there might be a snap count for him and then just kind of unleash him. I think him, doing some side work during training camp after, this calf injury was more so just cautionary, and it wasn't really a huge deal to begin with. So I think CMC is ready to go, and I would expect he gets his regular amount of carries. Trent, yeah, offensive lineman to begin with, it's weird to do a snap count, and you wouldn't do it with Trent anyway, I don't think.
Yeah.
He could be a little rusty. I guess we'll find out. He does have a pretty tough matchup, coming up this week as well. Aiyuk, I guess we'll see. Like, it really just depends on what he looks like in these practices, which we're not really privy to, right? So, if he looks a little rusty, if he looks like he needs to get his conditioning back up, then yeah, that's something I could see the 49ers doing. Because also, like, you don't want to risk injury. Like, that's always a thing with guys just coming out cold and getting back into the swing of things. So that's kind of the thing I worry about, especially with Trent and Aiyuk. But, as long as the 49ers bring them up to speed in a safe manner, I'm cool with them, getting a lot of run. I could see Jacob Cowing like getting some extra snaps in this game, just because he's exciting, and also you want to bring Aiyuk up to speed a little bit.
Yeah, and I think a little bit of what Cowing brings will help against the secondary. The Jets have a great secondary, man. And the threat of him trying to open things up will open things up over the middle for other people. As we get closer and closer to the game, and we start to get a sense of, what they're looking like, and maybe, what the snap counts are, depending on what, Kyle's really going to keep everything to the vest, so he's really not going to say anything. But then we'll start to figure out who's going to have a really big game. Like that, this could be a big Kittle game or a big Debo game. And I don't want anybody to think that if Aiyuk goes out there and he doesn't have like 7 catches for like 110 yards, that it necessarily has anything to do with like, with him being rusty or anything like that. It could just be the attention that he's drawing and Cowing's drawing is getting other guys open. So it's going to be interesting to see. Again, being in football shape and being in shape are two different things, right? Like with Trent, I think I have less hesitation for him to be anything other than, who he is. Even if it's 75%, 75%, like, good, he's still better than probably all the left tackles in football. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not as worried about him. But with Aiyuk, McCaffrey, being fresh is fine. But with Aiyuk, it could just be a little bit more of a rotation. You might see a little bit more of Jawan Jennings in a condensed split, trying to get him open as well, too. So, I mean, the 49ers are in a spot where if Aiyuk isn't up to the speed that they think he is, and there's no reason to think that he won't be, they still have other options, and they still have a lot of other good players that they can use. But, it's definitely easier to beat the New York Jets, who have a great defense with Brandon Aiyuk.
The 49ers will be a better team, even with these guys not at 100%, but there. So I'm feeling good about the situation regardless. And just speaking of the George Kittle aspect of it, and this possibly being a George Kittle game. I get that same sense too, because when I was on that Jets podcast yesterday, that was one of the things they were kind of worried about is George Kittle and the impact that he could have. And they kind of cited the game against the Browns last year when David Njoku went off for like 6 catches, 134 yards. So they kind of see that as a part of their defense that is maybe susceptible to big tight end games. And just with all the other weapons that the 49ers have, all the other threats, I think it could very well open things up for Kittle. I might just wear my Kittle jersey on Monday night, just to
making decisions now on Tuesday is crazy.
Increase it. I mean, why is that crazy?
Because, man, you gotta. All right, so like the way I go through with the drip, I start putting together the head. Like I start putting it together in my head early. Like, what am I gonna wear? Like, how am I gonna come? Like, like if I'm going out to watch a game, like how I'm about to step out. But my vibe could change very quick.
Shoes?
No, well, the shoes are always like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's I don't really have to worry about that. Like there's enough selection. Like I have, but like I might think I want to wear a jersey on Tuesday, but I'm not gonna stick to, I'm not gonna stick to that. Like I might just change it up on Friday and be like, nah, you know what? This is a little bit more saucy, especially with, oh my God, on the East Coast, it's like 69 degrees, which is a nice number. So it's fall. It's starting to feel like football's back all the way. So yeah, 100%. Like I'm with that.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm saying it now. I'm gonna rock my Kittle.
That's bold. Yeah. But all right. All of this, and now there's a football game on Monday, and now we can just put our eyes to straight up, who's going to be on the field. How do the 49ers win this game? What are some of the things that you're looking at in this Jets game that either concern you or you feel like the 49ers can exploit?
I mean, I definitely feel like, maybe the linebackers is one of the things that they could maybe exploit. I mean, dude, this is a tough like Jets defense. I'm not gonna, sit up here and say it's gonna be easy for the 49ers because I honestly really don't think it will. I think it's gonna be a very low scoring game. And I think for the 49ers, you want to get some quick game going, right? You don't want to get the run game going first and foremost, because I think that can open up the passing game, obviously, for this team, and just try to get some quick strikes, some misdirection stuff. Let's get Debo in there. Like I said, I want to see Cowing in this game. I want to see right away like how he can add a different element to this offense. And I think against the Jets, who tend to be a little over aggressive, that's part of the reason they're as good as they are, but use it against them. I think that's something that the 49ers could do, and they have the weapons to do that. So I'd like to see everyone involved in this one. And oh God, just keep Brock Purdy upright, please.
Yeah, and it's funny because the Jets are having their issues signing guys before week 1, as Hassan Reddick's not going to be there as well too. That definitely doesn't help, but yeah, their secondary is very good. They have one of the best linebacker cores in football. Like I would still put Warner and Greenlaw, ahead of them and everybody else. And then that defensive line is going to get after it. Obviously Trent Williams is somebody that we're very familiar with. The Jets have a good defense, and I think this is a very good test right out of the gate. Now, the problem is are we going to be able to contextualize the result of this game without it being like, well, Trent and this guy, they weren't there, like maybe some of that would have to be there in terms of like, okay, so it's just, but it is important for the 49ers to get off to a hot start because of how the schedule begins, right? Like the schedule gets much tougher when you have all those plays. Like it seems like it kicks off with like, I believe if I'm not mistaken, either the Cowboys or the Chiefs game where it's like 4 of the next 5 are playoff teams. And then at the end of the season, you have that stretch of like Buffalo, Miami, Detroit. Like you've got to get these wins. Like if you can get this one on Monday and then you roll in to see Sam Darnold next week in Minnesota, you feel way better about it because you have a real chance to go 2-0. But the Jets do present an interesting test for the 49ers right out of the gate with their defense. It's probably one of the better defenses they're going to face all season. On the other side, you know what they're trying to do on offense. And it's just the questions become, Aaron Rodgers hasn't played football in a very long time. Am I going to bet that Aaron Rodgers isn't, the guy anymore that can throw the football as well as he can? Probably not. But there is probably some concern that he just might not be the same guy. And by not be the same guy, I'm not mean that he's not good at football anymore. It's just he's been so good for so long, coming off that Achilles tear. He's a little bit older, right? Brees Hall is the dog, and then obviously Garrett Wilson. Mike Williams is going to play for this game. Robert Saleh, announced as well too. So they've got some weapons on the other side as well too. But I feel much better with the matchup of the 49ers defense against the Jets than the other way around, even though the 49ers still are a better offense. It's just the Jets defense is so good. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
I think the main question mark that I have about the 49ers defense still is, has their run defense improved? Right. And that's we don't even know if Pietro Gross-Matos is going to be healthy for this game too. So week 1 isn't going to be the definitive answer whether or not it's improved. But obviously, I do think that with Aaron Rodgers not having played for so long, with him, sitting out the preseason, that was by design. The Jets, didn't want to have him out there for the preseason. So he could go into this game maybe a little rusty, maybe, although they did have joint practices, so that could help. I do think the Jets are going to want to get their run game going as well. And Breece Hall is a dog, man. He's so good. And I think they're going to want to test out the 49ers run defense early. And that could be something that if the 49ers aren't on their P's and Q's and we're seeing missed tackles or things like that, it could get ugly, right? So I'm with you. Like, I have optimism on the defense, certainly have optimism on the 49ers secondary. I think the secondary is going to be one of the best in the league. But, there's still some questions I have that need to get answered in this game.
And that's another thing, talking about the 49ers secondary is Hufanga is going to be ramping up. Does it mean that he's going to be ready for, Monday night? We don't know. If not, I would assume George Odom is going to be starting across from Jair Brown. Then the cornerback rotation gets really, really interesting. Renardo Green, Demo, Mooney, like what does that look like? Are you just going to keep Lenore primarily in the slot? Like, do you feel good with Green, possibly going up against Mike Williams at times, who, is a jump ball guy, somebody who's trying to get downfield, right? Like, I think the secondary is really interesting. And I just see the question about the linebacker next to Warner. I would probably say Devondre Campbell, just based off of, obviously the way that they brought him in. If he were to struggle, then obviously it'll probably be someone like D. Winters. But yeah, I think it's going to be Devondre and Fred Warner. But I think the secondary presents an interesting conversation based on the fact that we don't know the status of Hufanga yet, and he could be ramping up. And if not, it's going to be George Odom. But what do they do outside, inside? Obviously Mooney's going to be outside, but like with Lenore and Green, like are they going to flip those two guys? And will they do the thing that they were doing last season, in which Lenore starts outside, and if they start to get spread out, like in 3 receivers, he kicks inside and someone comes outside? I think that's going to be interesting to keep an eye on Monday night as well.
Yeah, and then speaking of D. Winters, based on some of the beat writers, it doesn't seem like D. Winters is back at practice yet. So at least for week 1, we probably are expecting that he might not play. So yeah, Devondre Campbell, we'll definitely see a lot of him. But yeah, I mean, as far as your question on the inside outside, like, I don't know. I feel like that's one of those things that we'll kind of see play out as the season progresses, because I don't know if the 49ers have even really decided what they want to do there yet. Like, obviously, Isaac Yiadom was like the third corner for much of camp until he got hurt. And then that kind of obviously gave Renardo Green the opportunity, the experience to move up the ladder a little bit. But do they feel confident enough in Renardo Green to have him over Isaac Yiadom, and then Yiadom on the outside, and then Lenore inside? I mean, obviously they have a lot of confidence in Lenore no matter where he's at, so you have that going for you. But as far as like the rotation of that and how that works out, I could see them like experimenting with that a little bit in the first few weeks of the season. So yeah, that is going to be interesting. And while we're at it, and still speaking about the defense here, like the Brandon Staley effect, like what is that going to look like for this team, right? The new wrinkles that, yeah, we talked about early in the off season, but now, like, we're getting close to week 1, and it's like, what are they actually going to look like? Obviously, we didn't really get a glimpse of that in the preseason. They're not really going to show us anything. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what tricks they might have up their sleeve with this defense.
Yeah, I mean, to that point with Staley's Staley's defense is primarily run with a star player. And what that means is like, a guy who is like, either a safety or a corner, somebody who moves around up and down in the box. And I think the person that fits that the best is Malik Mustafa, also sporting new number 6. And if we're just going off coaching off vibes, Bernardo Green with that 0, man, he's got to get out there on that field, man. Yeah, it was too easy to call. He's a dog. That 0 is too clean, man. It was right there. So yeah, if we're just going off that, how do you keep Bernardo Green off the field with that clean 0 on? But yeah, it is going to be interesting when it comes to that. Again, Isaac Yiadom was the guy for a little while, and I think they really have eyes on him being there because of them betting on what happened with him last season. And if you look at his coverage numbers with the Saints, to be more of what they expect going forward as opposed to the exception to the rule. And there you go, man. Yeah, there you go. But yeah, again, the team is relatively healthy. I think the defensive line is something that we're going to obviously keep an eye on. Leonard Floyd is going to be fine. He's going to play in this game. I think it's super interesting that last season Monday Night Football, this season Monday Night Football is Leonard Floyd going after Aaron Rodgers. That's something that's kind of just a scary coincidence. But, Floyd, Bosa, Hargrave, Malik Collins, I think that looks good, and I think, again, after that, what we're going to find is we're going to see what this depth looks like because the Jets offensive line has improved. It's not exactly like a fortress, but it's absolutely improved. So we're going to find out pretty quickly how that works as well, too. But going back to your point about like Staley's defense, yeah, I think it might be a little bit interesting to maybe see, Malik Mustafa maybe creep down into the box a little bit if he's playing up high or if they want to use him in almost like a linebacker role because he triggers so fast on run defense and they can kind of use him as a chess piece. So I do think that star player aspect of Brandon Staley's defense is very interesting. And I think if anybody's suited for it, it's Mustafa.
Yeah, for sure. Really excited to see him, especially on special teams. I'm sure he'll be making plays early on. 4 new starters on the Jets offensive line. And you say like, yeah, they're improved. But I mean, I think we know that when you have so many new guys in one position, especially like offensive line where chemistry and, gelling as the season progresses is a thing. So in week 1, I don't know, like that could be a good opportunity for the 49ers defensive line. So I'm excited to see how that one shakes out as well. But it's not like the 49ers offensive line doesn't come with its own set of question marks as well.
Yeah, and it's really important for the 49ers defensive line to get off to a good start, particularly, obviously, Nick Bosa, who's talked about how it went last year. Funny enough, he put up his highest pressure numbers last season, too. And, that brings up the pressures versus sacks thing. But obviously, this defense starts to roll when Bosa's rolling. So if he gets out there and he gets off to a good start, it can only have a cascading effect as he goes on to, face Minnesota and other teams. Minnesota has Christian Darrisaw, but other teams that are going to have opportunities for him to kind of rack up the sacks. It's almost like a shooter, like, gets a layup to go and see the ball go through the hoop. All of a sudden, it just becomes like a canyon. And then you Steph Curry throwing it in from the logo. So, yeah, I think the pass rush, which we all kind of believe may take a step back from depth perception, like in terms of like, the rotation of guys, should be aided by the pass, the pass secondary and, the pass defense. So we could be seeing some coverage sacks, but, this is a good opportunity to get them to get off to a good start and obviously keep the good vibes rolling.
I got a prediction for Nick Bosa that
here we go. Breaks the sack record.
He'll be close. I could definitely see it. I think he's definitely gonna be 20 or more. I could see that because I saw someone else make that prediction, so it's not, I guess, my own. But I agree with that one. I agree. 20 plus is definitely in the cards for Nick. Because I feel like people aren't really talking about that enough. I mean, there's been so many other distractions this offseason, but I think like Nick Bosa is one of those guys he's gonna have a quote unquote bounce back year, right? It's so silly to say because, like you said, he was still very good last year. But by his account, not up to his standards. So I think we know he's gonna go off just a little bit harder in this season.
And that's kind of what's funny because last season Nick Bosa had his own contract saga and everything as well too. Went up to week 1, and then he didn't get his first sack until week 3 against the Giants, and everyone was kind of just like, see. So prepare for similar takes, on Monday with Aiyuk and Trent as well too. As long as we can contextualize it and still just keep a level head without jumping to super conclusions after a few quarters of football. But hey, Nothing like 49ers football to overreact to. Speaking of things to overreact to, Rob Stats Guerrera's old buddy, Mike Florio, he knows no bounds in poking the 49ers fans. And he knows no bounds in making sure that all of his stuff that has something to make the 49ers upset, he knows it's going to get clicks.
Exactly.
And here we go.
That's what he does.
On Tuesday, September 3rd, he puts out his power rankings. And I'm just going to let it go up on the screen so if everybody hasn't seen it, and then we'll describe it. But Rob, your buddy, he knows exactly what he's doing, man. I know that's your guy. But man, he really knows what he's doing to like make 49er fans upset. You can read it, Steph.
Yeesh. Yeah. Well, power rankings going into week 1. Chiefs number 1, which I don't think we're mad at. Lions number 2. 3, still not the Niners. Packers 4, Niners. Nasty work. I mean, this is clickbait if I've ever seen it.
Break out the guy in the supermarket farting into the phone. Like, that's all I think about. Like, when I see this, like, that's literally what this is. My God. Look, I'm guessing what Mike Florio was doing is obviously rage baiting. That's one. But I'm guessing what he's thinking is, well, Aiyuk is going to be rusty. Trent's going to be rusty. There has to be some sort of Super Bowl hangover. The 49ers beat the Lions and the Packers to go to the Super Bowl and ran it back, basically with the same exact team, and has a draft class that we're all essentially excited for. Like, almost all those guys look good. And yet somehow the Detroit Lions, who have improved their team, let's make sure we say that as well too. They got themselves some corners. Carlton Davis, I think, is one of the more underrated additions in the league. And the Packers are an interesting one because the Packers are getting a lot of love for what you think they are going to be going forward, right? Like what, like your
projection.
If you believe Jordan Love is going to be good, I'm not going to knock you for that. But saying that you believe that team is about to jump the 49ers when they've had the hardest of times, even with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, of beating the 49ers is a little presumptuous in my eyes. And again, this is a way for Florio to gain some rage clickbait. It's just, you're believing that Jordan Love is going to be this year after year guy, right? Like, and that's certainly possible. And he looked very good, at the end of the season. But how about we slow down and stop, going crazy with the Packers, since they haven't been able to beat the 49ers since, the other Bush was in, president. They haven't won a game against them since 2017 when CJ Beathard was there. What are we doing here, man? And now with Jordan Love, all of a sudden, now we need to be spooked by them?
Yeah. This is not going to be the last time that you hear my disdain for power rankings. I personally hate them. I think they do not matter. They're largely based on opinion to begin with. And I think we know Mike Florio's opinion, or at least his, I don't know. He's always trying to, rage bait and get clicks out of 49er fans. Because honestly, it works. I mean, we fall into the trap
all the time. We fall into the trap all the time. I'm not going to give that attention. I'm not going to give that attention. And there I am quote tweeting it. Like, it happens to me all the time.
Yeah. So he knows what he's doing. At some point, you can't hate the player. You got to respect the game. But I do hate power rankings, and especially week 1 power rankings, because yes, it is largely based on projections and, like I said, opinion. And I truly just feel like he made this power ranking first draft last week before the Brandon Aiyuk news, any of this update on Trent. Obviously, didn't know Christian McCaffrey was going to be practicing today, all that. I mean, hey, maybe my optimism was pretty low last week as well, but he obviously didn't update his ranking this morning before he put it out, and was just like, this is good. So that's the result that we have
no
today.
Notes.
But no notes, but power rankings suck. They always will suck. They will always be pointless. And I definitely encourage all 49er fans to ignore them as much as you can.
I would encourage them too, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to either. Like, I fall into the trap all the time.
I will retweet if the 49ers are number 1 in the power rankings, though. When it fits my narrative, I'll share.
Fits my narrative is back. This is how you know we're so back. It's football season. Fits my narrative is perfect, man. If there's a PFF number that wants to support my argument for a player, I like it. But if it goes against the player that I like, oh, that metric is stupid. PFF subjective, man. It's subjective, man. You know, like this is how you know it's back. Like as a sports fan, any moment we can go from it's Jover to we're so back. And this is how you know football season is back, man. I'm so happy to be talking about actual football. Gold standard power rankings. 49ers, San Francisco, Ricky Pearsall, Trent Williams. I don't know. Ricky Pearsall's got to go up in the rankings, man.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
I think he's got to be number one this week.
Yeah. I don't know. This week he's definitely got to be number one, man. Just for the vibes and everything as well too. But yeah, again, it's hard. See, this is the part that I want to talk about now too. It's hard to gauge anything in week one because week one is so wonky. That's usually when you get these weird games where like a team like the Bills lost that game to the Jets last year after Aaron Rodgers played 4 snaps. They lost to Zach Wilson, right? Like in that game. And that's week one. Doesn't necessarily mean anything in terms of what it's going to be, but week one is always wonky when it comes to that. You know, like essentially week one is an extension of the preseason. And that's why you see so much sloppy football early on, right? Like nobody comes out like, I mean, some teams do. They come out firing on all cylinders. For the most part, it's when you're going to get all these weird things happening. So some lower scoring games and more mistakes and things like that. Like you've been installing all training camp. You've installed for this entire week. And then, you know, you still have these little things that you're just trying to work through. Like, I feel like teams don't play their best football until around like week 4, week 5.
This is why I stay away from DFS and betting on week one of the season, because it's just like everything you thought you knew, it goes out the window completely. So
not me, man. I'm all in. I wish. Hey, I'm all in. I wish we could talk, betting and all that stuff out here and everything. But yeah, I'm all in. I can't wait. This is what I mean. I waited all off season for this. My goodness. So, but yeah, and let's also talk about this. You know, last season the 49ers went out there and they, crushed the Steelers, right? Like, and I think the hesitation with that game going into it was, well, is Purdy, completely healthy? Like, how's he look? Look fine. Look great. But in past years, even in games the 49ers have won under Kyle Shanahan, they've come out a little sluggish at times, right? Like, you think back to 2019 against Tampa Bay, they win that game, but Jameis Winston throws 2 pick sixes. You think to 2020, obviously out of the gate, that was a weird time with COVID. They lose that game to Arizona. They lose George Kittle for a little while, and obviously 2020 is completely doomed. 2021, you win the Lions game, but that game gets weird all the way down to the end. Like it just, and then obviously the years that Shanahan lost when he was coach in 2017, 2018, it's just the team wasn't as competitive. But the teams kind of get out to a little bit of a slow start aside from last year. So hopefully that can continue as well, because Shanahan can debunk another narrative about him about starting slow if they come out and they fire on all cylinders, especially with all of the drama from this offseason.
All right, well, tell me what you think, because my personal opinion is that we aren't going to see a firing on all cylinders 49ers team in week 1.
Are you being pessimistic, man?
Oh, it's not pessimistic. I'm just trying to be real here, like, because I just see and it has a little bit to do with the Jets, but I think I also have to factor in the fact that the 49ers are coming off a Super Bowl loss, coming off all the drama that literally ended like this past weekend. And, just, I don't know, that just a lot of questions around that. So yes, the vibes are back, but I don't think that's going to equate necessarily to a hot start against the Jets. And like I said, I do expect this game to be low scoring. The 49ers can win this game. It's just not going to be like the type of performance that we saw last year in week 1 against the Steelers, where they were firing on all cylinders. So I think it's going to be unsexy if they do win in this game. People shouldn't freak out if that happens. Like, I think this team's been through a lot, all right, in the last year. And then we know the Jets are out for blood just based on how last year went for them. So, I'm just factoring all of that in. That I don't think they're going to be, starting off too hot, but they could still win.
Rob, bleep it out. No, I'm just kidding.
No, but really, like, so you think that they'll get off to like a hot start?
Well, again, the defense is the part that it's like if you're able to run over this defense, then you might be looking at like a buzzsaw offense like you saw last season. But
Sure.
I think it's very fair. Again, this is going to be their early test. I think it's very fair to think that the 49ers can win this game in a sexy way, but it won't be like them lighting up like 38. Like, like it could be them getting turnovers and having a kick return to the crib or something like that. Like there's ways.
Ah,
Again, I have the 49ers winning this game. Spoiler alert, I think they're going 20-0 as well too. Make sure you get the trophy ready and everything. But yeah, I mean the Jets do present those challenges, and obviously, again, as I explained, preseason essentially like bleeds into week one. Especially with the players who haven't played. So yeah, I think they're gonna win as well too. But I think good there's a fashion that they can win that is still sexy without it being like them lighting them up for like 45
yeah.
points. Like it could be the defense being absolutely clamps the entire time. And then we start to get it in our head like imagine when Greenlaw comes back and you start to think about all the things that could be there. So I think there's ways to do it that are outside of the offense lighting it up. I think if the defense comes out and takes a little step up, it greatly improves the 49ers chances because as we talked about, the run defense was a little lackluster last year. And I think they've addressed it many times in talking about how they're going to fix it. They've been asked, Sorensen and Staley, they've been asked. So, if their defense takes a little bit of a step up in run defense, I think we already know that we have confidence in the secondary. I think this could be a sexy win because the 49ers defense might be clamps and much better than they were last season. And they were still a top 10 defense last year.
How about special teams taking a
I was
step
trying
up
to stay away from that. I
this
I, I want to keep the
season?
vibes good.
You're the one that said special teams. Did he not mention special teams? He
I was
mentioned
trying to
special
put
teams.
good
And
juju on
the
the special teams, but I know the conversation you
oh
want to
yeah,
have.
they need it.
Yeah.
They need it, but I do feel like a game that we're expecting to be so defense focused, and I
Mhm.
think both defenses could put the clamps on respective offenses that they're going up against. It could come down to special teams. So the 49ers released their first, unofficial depth chart, or I don't know if that was the first one technically. Depth
Mhm.
chart, whatever.
I don't think it's.
Uh
I think it's like
it's
the
like
first one
week
of the
one depth
season.
chart.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So Jacob Cowan returning punts, Jordan Mason returning kicks. Now,
Mm.
for Jordan Mason, I think we would have liked to see Isaac Rendell there first, but I want to
But
remind
he's hurt.
everyone that he tweaked his groin after the
The
preseason
Raiders
game
game.
against the Raiders. So
Hmm.
it makes sense for Jordan Mason there. Otherwise, I think Grendo would be there, and I'd
Yes.
feel a lot better about that. But in any case, with those two guys like returning, I mean, how you feel about special teams?
I'm definitely concerned with that. I mean, it's been an issue the entire time under Shanahan. Different coordinators, different players. Our favorite stat is, I believe, what is it, Ted Ginn? The last time that a punt was returned was like 2011, 2012, something like that. It's been a while. I think we're excited about Jacob Cowing. That's fine. I think I'm not as worried about the kickoff returns and everything as well, too, especially being that if we're talking about slow starts and things that have really just started, like, you don't expect guys to be really good on kickoff right away. It would be more coverage themselves. Like um, Xavier Gibson is somebody who's really good for the Jets as well, too. They're going to have to really make sure they focus in on him as well, too, because they really like him over there and he's made plays at times. So it looks like John Lynch is about to speak as well too about Ricky Pearsall. So look out for that. But if it comes to special teams, I'm less worried than I have been on returns because it always just felt like guys were just fair catching it and holding on to it than I am in previous years. Just obviously the coverage part, like just getting down there and being able to tackle, and I think that's again why you see sometimes on the 53-man roster, you're like, well, why is Demetrius Flanagan fouls here? Like, why is this guy here? It's because, you got to fill out the special teams as well, too. And then, I guess they trust him that way. So it's less about the returns. I feel good about Cowing. I think he adds another dimension. You don't want a guy to just fair catch it. You want to see somebody who can actually advance the field. I think the 49ers have kind of been missing that. I think they'll take it up to 25 and they'll say, all right, offense goes 75. What if there was a punter who could at least flip the field a little, gain some yards? Same thing with kickoff. How that would be advantageous to the offense and putting them in better spots than just having them march down the field from the other side.
Yeah. And yeah, special teams I think has the opportunity to be more exciting this year, especially with the return games. So we'll see what those guys look like in week one. Like I said, I think it could make a difference in this game. So we'll see. Um I was gonna ask you something, but I completely forgot as I was.
You lost
Oh,
it. Mhm.
team captains. Like, do you
Ah,
care about like 49er team captains at all? They haven't released it. There's been a few
mhm,
teams that have like released some of their
mhm.
captains, but 49ers have not yet.
Fred, Bosa, Trent, Debo, Kittle,
So
Brock.
Trent, even though he held out, because remember Nick Bosa held out and he wasn't voted as a team captain last year.
I mean, this really like, all right, look, not that it's meaningless, but the 49ers have so many players worthy of this,
Yeah,
right? Christian
that's so
McCaffrey
true.
could, like, it's just, it's not a real big talking point, in my opinion. Obviously Brock's going to be one. He was captain last year. He's the guy that they all look to right now. Debo was there at every single session. Looks great. It's got to obviously be him. Bosa, I think, will get it. Kittle as well too. I think they find a way to get it to Trent. I think when you listen to the way those guys were talking about Trent the entire time while he was gone, it was more about like, just, man, he's a leader, and we all love him. And it was even guys on defense that were talking. So I think Trent gets it as well too. I don't think it's a big talking point about like who gets it and who's snubbed. Like, it is what it is. And there's only so many players, and there's so many deserving players that it could be.
Yeah, for sure. I do agree with a lot of the names you mentioned as well. And yeah, we'll see who gets the nod. And it really doesn't matter. Like captains is a thing we talk about in week 1, and beyond that, like I think we forget for the most part who's a who's a captain. And because you can still be a leader and not be a captain on this team. That's how
100%.
deep this team is of leaders. So yeah, if Trent doesn't make it, it's not that big of a deal, but
Yeah.
definitely could make a case for him, obviously.
Could make for some good YouTube content. Why do the 49ers hate Trent Williams? We'll be back with that and more. No, honestly, look, again, with everything that's going on, obviously, it's crazy to think that the way this offseason went and how we went through the process of the combine, the draft, trying to figure out the DC, Aiyuk, Trent, obviously the situation with Ricky Pearsall. It's been a wild offseason, one of the wildest in a long time. But here we are, Tuesday, September 3rd, and we are on the doorstep of actually playing football. And the greatest saying out there is winning is the best deodorant for everything. And it just, if you go out there and you beat the Jets on national TV, nothing else matters, man. And we can look back at everything that happened this offseason and put it in the rear view and maybe laugh at ourselves a little for being a little bit too dramatic at certain times or being upset for, certain things. But in the end, it's always never a doubt. Never a doubt. And, I always knew that the guys would all be back together. But having the guys all back together, being ready for this test, it just does feel really good at this point, for this team after such an offseason that felt like it was dragging and crawling by on hands and knees with almost any update that we got that was rarely positive.
Yeah, I mean, they could change the narrative on everything that happened this offseason just by going out there and getting the win in week 1, and that's one way to kick off a season after everything that happens. So, hopefully we're talking about a win next week, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, are we predicting a 49ers win? Absolutely. 100%.
Yes.
Like that's the way you got to.
10-7.
Yeah, 10-7. Please no. I can't watch a game like that. I just can't, man. I'm just like, come on, man. Like, what are we doing here? But the good news is, 49ers fans, you get your full Sunday football with no 49ers. Just watching your fantasy team, doing your bets, hanging with the guys, hanging with the girls, whatever. Think about this, right? Thursday football, Friday football, Saturday full slate of college football, Sunday full slate of Sunday football, and Monday night football. The San Francisco 49ers are back, and we are on the national TV. Guys, we are eating so good this week with NFL content. And again, in this league, the NFL creates the content. We just cover it. And that's what's the best part about football, is not talking about things that are hypotheticals, not talking about things that it's about what happened on the field, and we can get back to talking about what's going on the field. Steph, I just feel like a kid waiting for the Christmas presents. By the way, guys, on Sunday, make sure you leave out your milk and cookies for Scott Hansen. because it's his holiday, man, as well too. 7 hours. I can't wait.
Saturday night.
Saturday night. I'm sorry. Saturday night. Leave out your milk and cookies for Scott Hansen because it's his day on Sunday, man. That guy, he doesn't go to the bathroom for 7 hours, and he's literally on. I don't know how he does it. The man's a machine. The man is a machine.
Yeah, I hope the script writers went off for week 1 because I am ready to watch it all on Sunday. Be a couch potato, crack open a cold one, and check how my fantasy teams are doing. Hopefully, they all get wins as well. And yeah, Jay actually helped me out with a trade proposal today. So
yeah, no need to make a trade right now. There's no games going on. Like I finished my last draft last night and everything. That's it. So. Yeah, it's done. Set it in, lock it in, set your lineups, all that stuff. Like, it's just an exciting time right now. And thank you guys for tuning in. As always, this is another episode of Bully Ball on the Gold Standard Podcast Network. Make sure you subscribe to the Gold Standard Podcast Network wherever you get your audio podcasts. Make sure you like and subscribe to the Gold Standard YouTube channel as well too. There's a lot of great content on there weekly. And Steph has a YouTube channel, Steph 49K. So do I. You guys can get over there and shoot a like and hit a subscribe on there if you want to. Make sure you follow Steph on Twitter at Steph49K. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at JasonAponte2103. Steph, the vibes are through the roof. The 49ers are back. I'm glad to do this again with you for another year, man.
Let's go.
But for Steph, for Jay, we're out of here.
Peace.